our growth outlook is steadily improving. We project real economic growth of 1.6% in 2026, an improvement from the 1.4% estimated in 2025. This improvement reflects the continued strengthening of economic performance from the second half of 2025. Over the medium term, growth is expected to average 1.8%, reaching 2% by 2028. Persistent logistics, bottlenecks, weak public infrastructure, and the recent outbreak of the foot and mouth disease continue to weigh on economic activity and pose risks to the outlook. In the light of this, rapid inclusive growth remains our only durable path forward. Our efforts to promote faster economic growth continue to revolve around four pillars. First, maintaining macroeconomic stability, implementing structural reforms, investing in growth-enhancing infrastructure, and build state capacity. These pillars are the foundation upon which inclusivity is built and how we ensure that growth is faster. Madam Speaker, a key facet of macroeconomic stability is prudent fiscal management that advances socio-economic obligations. Our fiscal strategy involves four features. A, support economic growth by accelerating public investment, improve the efficiency of public spending, improve the composition of spending by containing the public service wage bill while increasing capital investment, entrenching sustainable public finances with a principles-led fiscal anchor. We are already reaping the fruits of this strategy. The consolidated budget deficit has narrowed to 4.5% of GDP for 25-26, an improvement from 4.8% that we estimated in the 25 budget. The deficit falls to 4% in 26-27 and 3.1% the year after. Gross debt stabilizes as share of GDP in 25-26 at 78.9%. In 2026, it falls further to 77.3% of GDP and declines to 76% by 28-29. This slightly higher debt peak this year reflects weaker nominal GDP growth and our decision to take advantage of strong investor demand in domestic and global markets by increasing our issuance in 25-26. The main budget primary surplus for 25-26 reaches 0.9% of GDP. In the next financial year, it expands to 1.6% and then to 1.9% in 27-28. By 28-29, we see it reaching at 2.3%. Honorable Speaker, to sustain fiscal discipline, we intend to continue the engagement on fiscal anchors. We aim to introduce a proposal of a principle-based fiscal anchor in the medium-term budget policy statement after thorough consultation in Cabinet, Parliament, and with the public. Just as inflation targeting provided clarity and credibility to monetary policy, the fiscal anchor aims to entrench fiscal credibility. Madam Speaker, the structural reforms to lift growth we are implementing alongside the fiscal strategy reflect an understanding that the state should adjust to the needs of the national economy in a flexible way. Operation Vulindlela must be understood in this context. In terms of energy reforms, we are stabilizing electricity supply and building a competitive, reliable energy market. Regulatory reforms in this sector have unlocked significant private investment, accelerating generation capacity and driving the transition towards cleaner, reliable power. In logistics, we are dismantling bottlenecks in rail and ports that have throttled exports and raised the cost of doing business. Our intention is to bolster public-private investment in rail operations while retaining state ownership of the rail infrastructure. The objective is to move goods faster, cheaper, and more reliable. Reforms in local government include shifting to a performance-linked utility model for water and electricity services. This is aimed at strengthening financial sustainability, accountability, and transparency. Spatial and housing reforms focus on restructuring our cities to ensure that people have access to affordable housing located closer to centers of economic activity. This is a systematic effort to remove the structural blockages that have held back growth for many years. Madam Speaker, over the past 3 years, our tax system has demonstrated resilience despite slow economic growth. For 25-26, the gross tax revenue is revised upwards by 21.3 billion compared to the estimate in the 25 budget. Higher than expected net VAT, corporate income tax, and dividends tax collections improved the year-in-year outlook. As a result, government has decided to withdraw the 20 billion in tax increases provisionally included in the May 25 budget. The improved fiscal position allows us enough room to withdraw the proposed tax increases without putting fiscal sustainability or economic activity at risk. We are also proposing additional tax measures to ease financial burden on households and businesses by adjusting personal income tax brackets and rebates fully in line with inflation. Ndibuyisela imali back ezipokothweni zenu. Honest and in tax ngoku ndinika nje imali back. Madam Speaker, our national savings and investment rate is far below the levels needed to truly create generational wealth and support local investment in the economy. To encourage South Africans to save more, we propose that the tax-free annual investment limit be increased from 36 to 46,000 per year. The limit to retirement fund deductions be raised from 350,000 to 430,000, allowing individuals to invest more each year on a tax-free basis. Madam Speaker, each year we ask South Africans to send in their tips for the budget. This year we got more than 1,200 citizens sent us their opinions and suggestions. Renette Oosthuizen, a small business owner from Gauteng, had this tip. Minister Godongwana, please increase the VAT registration threshold for small business to 2 million. The 1 million threshold has not kept pace with the cost of doing business, close quote. Renette, you will be happy to know that in this budget, the compulsory VAT registration threshold increases from 1 million to 2.3 million. We are taking other measures to support small business. We are raising the capital gains tax exemption for the sale of small business for older persons from 1.8 to 2.7 million. This applies to small business worth 15 million instead of 10 million previously. It will enable small business owners to receive more tax relief when they sell their business. Madam Speaker, increases to certain taxes are unavoidable. That's the bad part of me. For 2026, excise duties on tobacco will unfortunately be increased in line with inflation. This includes excise duties on electronic nicotine and non-nicotine delivery system. As a result, a tax of 20 pack of cigarettes rises from 22.81 to 23.58. Pipe tobacco rises by 28 cents per 25 grams, and cigarettes tobacco by 87 cents per 50 grams. Cigars rise by R4.56 per 23 grams. The excise on alcohol beverage also rises by inflation. As such, a 340 milliliter can of beer or cider increases by 8 cents. A 750 milliliter bottle of wine goes by 15 cents. A 750 million bottle of spirits will increase by 320. In terms of the fuel levy, the total increase will also be in line with inflation. The general fuel levy will go up by 9 cents per litre for petrol and 8 cents per litre for diesel. The carbon fuel levy will go up by 5 cents per litre for petrol and 6 cents for diesel. The road accident fund fuel levy will increase by 7 cents per litre. Honourable members, the strong revenue collection this year and the overall resilience of the tax administration reflects an efficient and agile tax administration, continually improving through targeted compliance initiative. However, the scourge of illicit trade represents a major threat to these hard-won gains. It threatens our economy, endangers consumers, and robs the fiscals of billions in revenue. The recent announcement by a major tobacco producer that will close its local operation is a stark reminder of the impact of illicit trade on the jobs and overall economy. The sophisticated and organized nature of illicit operations demands an intensive effort to curb this trade, secure prostitutions, and dismantle its supply chains. SARS has already intensified its efforts. It will also continue its joint operations with border management, the SAPS, and the Defence Force. I always improvise. I improvise. Wait a little.
Order, honourable members, can the minister continue with his speech?
Yes, this thing has failed me.
It's page 7, Minister, page 7.
Order, honourable members, I know you are trying to help, but you should have raised it through the speaker. Thank you very much, Honourable Mawujo. Minister, you can proceed.
I said SARS has already intensified its efforts. It will also continue its joint operations with the Border Management Agency, the SAPS, and the Defence Force to stop the illicit trade in tobacco. I'm going to come back in later when I talk about the crime and peace and security. On the financial sector, Madam Speaker, National Treasury continues to work on ensuring that financial services customers are treated fairly and the sector operates optimally. One key issue is the more than 88 billion rand of unclaimed financial assets and benefits. Following recommendations from the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, National Treasury will introduce reforms to manage these unclaimed benefits through the creation of a central administrator responsible for record keeping and tracing. We will also shortly publish draft regulations under the Currency and Exchange Act to include crypto assets in our capital inflow management regime. Crypto assets will now be governed in the cross-border movement of capital framework, which will be complementary to regulations already in place to prevent use of crypto assets to launder money and commit fraud. The use of data and artificial intelligence has become a critical for the future development of economies worldwide. As such, data infrastructure should be considered as critical as electricity, ports, and transport networks. This year, we will explore options to help data centers and related infrastructure to expand this investment in South Africa and solidify our role as a regional hub for these technologies. One of the main policy objectives is to ensure that the financial sector supports regional integration and the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. National Treasury is easing restrictions on the cross-border flows of capital by enabling domestic asset managers to manage portfolios of foreign assets. This will improve competitiveness and allow South African to co-function as a hub for investment into the continent. National Treasury, working with the South African Reserve Bank, has prioritized modernizing the national payment system and innovation in digital finances. The payment ecosystem management has achieved its first milestone, and with the establishment of the payments utility, which was completed in November last year, with the establishment of Pay-in Corporation. Pay-in will provide open, shared digital payments infrastructure to support operational ability across various payment providers, serving as the main platform for high-value and retail transactions. In the budget in May 25, we made the statement that we will do everything possible to use savings arising or expenditure reviews to fund future projects. In other words, tax will be the last resort. Madam Speaker, in this context, in this budget last year, as we have said, we have kept that promise through our commitment to finding savings from unproductive expenditure, closing leakages, and rooting out inefficiencies. I'm happy to announce that 12 billion in savings have been identified over the medium term. Targeted and responsible savings are not a once-off initiative. They will be an ongoing and entrenched part of the budget process going forward to weed out inefficiencies and low-performance programs. Every program and every allocation must demonstrate value, efficiency, and accountability. As part of this process, the public transport network grant has been scaled down by about 8.4 billion over the next 3 years. The grant has not improved access to public transport relative to the investment made. The grant will, however, continue to help cover indirect costs in cities that run business bus services. Enhanced targeting of social grants, authentication of beneficiaries to reduce fraud in the grant system will yield 3 billion of savings. The South African Social Security Agency has its biometric and income verification process resulted in nearly 35,000 grants being identified as incorrect, fraudulent, and therefore terminated. Honorable members, we are committed to improving access to many South Africans deserving and eligible for social support. Abuse of the system, however, will not be tolerated. The remaining savings from the TARs are reallocated to strengthen capacity in the judiciary, border management, defense, and state SAC. Madam Speaker, to secure the skills essential to modern economy, government is reforming the national skills ecosystem. The skills development levy paid by employers to fund sector education and training authorities of SETAs and the National Skills Fund have not yielded the outcomes we expected. We must improve how we equip individuals ready to enter the labor market. Beyond providing them a theoretical understanding, the government will explore ways to reorganize training by introducing a dual training skills acquisition system. We are looking at how institutions with the capacity to train job seekers and graduates can tool them with artisanal skills. Turning to the spending priorities, the budget we're tabling this for 26-27 will spend 2.67 trillion rand. This spending includes a proposed 5 billion in the contingency reserves to cater for disasters declared since the medium-term budget policy statement. In other words, the disasters that took place in January this year. Government spending remains highly distributive. The social wage accounts for more than 60% of non-interest spending over the medium term. Basic education, health, and social protection constitute 70.3% of the social wage in 26-27, providing support to 13.6 million school children, healthcare service to 84% of the population, social grants to 26.5 million beneficiaries. Coming to social grants, bendicinga ogogo ngizabanyusela kakhulu kodwa ndibanyuselanga ngohlobo bendicinga bazabanyusela ngalo kulo nyaka. Kodwa ndiyabanyusela. Kodwa ndiyabahoya. Kodwa ndiyabahoya. Social grants are allocated 292.8 billion rand, enabling the following increases. The old age grant, disability grant, and care dependence grants rise by 80 rand in April 2026 to 2,400. The same applies to the War Veterans Grant, which increases by 80 rand to 2,420. The foster care grant goes up from 1.2 in April, a 40 rand increase, and to 1,300 in October, a 10 rand increase. Child support grant and grant in aid grant increased by 20 rand. The social relief of distress continues in the current form over this year. Let me clarify. The SRD is in the baseline of the budget. That's not in dispute. When we say continue, the President says it should be converted into a libelous term. What we will then be doing during the course of the year, between now and the next financial year, is to give content to that. What is going to look like, what has been eligibility criteria, and so on and so on. So there's no dispute that is not going to be in the system. On peace and security, Madam Speaker, the President in his State of the Nation announced the deployment of the Defence Force alongside police to fight illegal mining and gangsterism. To support this and other efforts to intensify law and order, spending on peace and security increases from 268.2 billion in 25-26 to 291.2 billion in 28-29. Border Management Authority has been allocated an additional 990 million rand over the medium term to build capacity by filling 738 posts. 2.7 billion is added to defense over the medium term to improve operations, including maintaining the South African Air Force fighting capability. A quick question arises, and people was also asked this question in the media, about what about the additional deployment of the Defence Force? I'm saying the law acknowledges that the President may at any point in time deploy the armed forces. It doesn't say the President will first check whether there's a budget or something else. If there's war tomorrow, he can say, hey, just go and sit and have a budget. No, the war is going to send the army to go and fight. That's how these things work. Then it's for us to say, in the light of that, Section 16 of the Act of the PFMA considers that deployment as an emergency. We will be working with the Defence Force in this regard to finalize that. But in addition to this, we have given both the Defence Force and the police through the CARA Fund 1 billion each. 1 billion the police, 1 billion the Defence Force for crime prevention strategy. Over the medium term, 883 million is shifted from the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to the Office of the Chief Justice. This will enable the Office of the Chief Justice to manage its own budget, enhance its independence from the executive from the 1st of April this year. Similar arrangements for the funding of Parliament are being undertaken in the spirit of separation of powers. In other words, Parliament itself must not rely on the executive for the performance of its functions. An additional 687 million has been allocated to increase capacity in the judiciary over the medium term. The President also announced the establishment of special courts. Once the costing is finalized, allocation for this will be considered later in the year. We have had a discussion with the judiciary insofar as this is concerned, together with the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, and examining how do we give effect to this injunction by the President. We have agreed on 3 phases. The first one is that there are courts that currently are under pressure, and we need to see how can we deal with that pressure. Secondly, we need to look at what does this mean, this establishment of these additional courts in terms of the number of judges? And how soon can we do that? And we have put up some technical teams with the Office of the Chief Justice to pursue this injunction by the President. There are also a number of commissions of inquiry which are taking place. Some of them have asked for an extension. We'll also be looking at how do we fund that extension over time. The special appropriation we're tabling before you of 8.5 billion today looks at 5.8 billion for PRASA rolling stock fleet renewal program. If I may explain to you, how does this thing work? PRASA has had a contract with Gibela. They've got to order a minimum of 35 locomotives per annum. If failure to order 35 is a breach of contract. So we've got to make sure that PRASA continues with its contractual obligations. We've got to pay for up subscription to the World Bank, which we have not been paying for a while, of about R1 billion. We are providing 700 million rand to the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. We are making this money to the department without earmarking it, because we want them, for now, while we are looking into the details of how we're going to fund the Centec debt, the SABC, and the SAPO. They should be able to meet this through this flexibility. On the division of revenue, which is the division of revenue, says how money between the different spheres of government is allocated. 48.9% of national raised revenue is allocated to national government, and 41.7% to the provinces, and 9.4% to local government. I must express this point, Mr. President, that although the quantum that goes to to municipalities is increasing, but as a percentage of the share, there's a decline from about 9.7 to 9.4. And I think it's something we need to be attending. Translated into rands and cents, national gets 951 billion rand, provinces 810 billion rand, municipalities 182 billion rand. Additional allocation to provinces equitable shall include 348 million rand to progressively equalize grade R teacher pay, 340 million rand for early retirement and voluntary exit programs, 390 million rand for the Presidential Employment Initiative. 1.5 billion is added to provincial roads maintenance grant in the 26-27 to fund carry-through costs of disaster that occurred between April 2024 and June 2025. Basic education. In terms of the consolidated expenditure, spending on education remains the largest component at 23.7% over the medium term. Basic education receives 22.7 billion for carry-through cost announced in May 2025. Early childhood development receives the majority of these funds. 9.9 billion supports employee compensation and other pressures in education. Early childhood, as I've said, development grant receives an additional 12.8 billion over the next 3 years, expanding services to an additional 300,000 children. This will also maintain the increase per child per day subsidy of 24 rand introduced in 25-26. The increased allocation aligned to the National School Nutrition Program to food inflation to continue to provide meals to over 9.9 million learners in almost 20,000 schools. In health and education, Madam Speaker, 26 billion rand is allocated to provide provinces to bolster our HIV/AIDS program, such as the prevention of mother-to-child transmission and the provision of antiretroviral drugs. That's 26 billion. A part of the targeted responsibility and saving initiative, provinces will repurpose some of their funding. We've agreed on this with provinces. Some of their funding to meet the obligation towards the PEPFAR. This follows the funding withdrawal by the United States of America. 21.3 billion is allocated to health sector over the medium term for the compensation and employment of doctors and to make up for the shortfalls in goods and service expenditure. On local government, 86 billion is to support the provision of free basic services to 11 million households. Assuming, I'm making this assumption, assuming these 11.2 households are in the indigenous register. If they are not, there's a challenge. Local government is the sphere where communities experience the state most directly. Yet, many municipalities are in financial and operational distress and therefore unable to deliver services as they should. Audit outcomes highlight this unacceptable reality. 63% of municipalities are in financial distress and the proportion of clean audits remains unacceptably low. A central challenge with municipalities is that they not only differ in capacity but also in their revenue-raising potential. This demands a more targeted approach to respond to the diverse pressures facing municipalities. The National Treasury is providing support for development of long-term financial plans. These plans will improve project identification, sustainable planning, cash flows, and inform financial decisions. This will negate the challenge of unfunded mandates and limited capacity to maintain infrastructure and sustain services. Further structural reforms are underway, including a comprehensive review of the local government fiscal framework, together with the comprehensive review of the local government work paper. Together, these reforms will modernize the intergovernmental system and build a more capable, resilient, and appropriate differentiated local government sphere. There's what we have called the metro trading system, which we have been raising in Parliament. Essentially what it means that we are incentivizing municipalities to treat their water services and their electricity utilities as business entities which should be run professionally. As a result, we are providing money for this purpose to incentivize municipalities, and we're providing about 27.7 billion. So, and another one, 64 billion. But let me just tell an important story. If you pay an electricity to a municipality, you are not paying an electricity bill outside the bill of the municipality. And if you are paying water, you are not paying outside the water separately. What are the side effects of this? Some effect of this. Johannesburg. They collect about 9 billion rand on water. But because it goes into the main port, what actually comes back into investment into the water, Johannesburg water, is 1 billion rand out of that 9 billion rand. The implications are services. There's no maintenance of the water system. I'm not saying that's the only problem with the water challenge we face. That's one minor problem. If we solve that problem, we can be able to fix leaks and so on. But it won't deal with the fundamental challenge, which is the infrastructure they are dealing with is old. A challenge we need to be discussing as government is how do we deal with that infrastructure. A second area I want to deal with on municipalities is the reform of the infrastructure grant system, municipal infrastructure grant system. Let me just again capture this thing by using an example. Capture this system by using an example. When in 2024, some municipalities had disaster and we provided them with money. In 2025, the same municipalities, there was disaster in the same municipalities. When we gave them the money in 2025, they had not used the 2024 money. Now, the point is, it's easy to say the money returns back to Treasury, but the effect of it is that the communities that have lost a bridge or something and still have that problem. So in this regard, the grant system will be reformed to make sure that we are going to provide the money to those institutions, even the district municipality or other accredited institutions, which will help those municipalities to provide the service. That's how this grant is going to be working. Now, coming to the infrastructure issues. Somebody says to me, what is this? Every day you talk about $1 trillion. Yes, because I'm announcing $1 trillion now. In the next outer year, I'll be adding another amount. It will still remain $1 trillion. So it's a rolling thing. How is this trillion broken down? 507 billion rand will be spent by state-owned companies and other public entities. All right? 217 0.8 billion rand by provinces and 205.7 billion by municipalities. Largely by sector, transport and logistics make up the largest share. SANRAL will focus on strengthening long-term network resilience. This includes annual maintenance of approximately 27,000 kilometers and the resurfacing of 2,000 kilometers of road. PRASA, as I've indicated, continues to implement its corridor recovery program and modernize core infrastructure to rebuild reliable, affordable rail service for commuters. This will enable the increase in annual passenger trips from 77 million trips in 24-25 to between 250 and 450 million trips over the medium term. In energy, investment will focus on improving the security of supply and mobilize private sector investment. In the medium-term budget policy, we announced that National, together with the World Bank, are making significant progress with the credit guarantees vehicle. The credit guarantee vehicle, which will support massive investment in transmission infrastructure, will be incorporated as a company in the coming months. Next, we will expand. We expect development partners to confirm their capital participation. Thereafter, the credit guarantee vehicle will apply for a license from the Prudential Authority. We are targeting the credit guarantee vehicle to be operational later this year. In water, investment are directed towards high-impact bulk water augmentation schemes, refurbishing of aging infrastructure, and the completion of strategic projects that support economic nodes and agriculture and household supply. Honourable members, we continue to implement reforms to unlock greater private sector participation, enhance spending efficiency, and shorten delivery timelines. On triple Ps, we have amended the triple regulations as we have indicated. There are about 63 projects now at different stages of development. Key amongst them are the 6 border posts that we have announced in time, which are ready to be announced towards the finalization towards the end of the financial of the year. Similar progress with the Gautrain is being made. A conclusion of this project will close major PP transaction in more than 5 years. On the budget facility for infrastructure, the budget facility for infrastructure has approved 21.9 billion for 5 major projects. These include Transnet's coal and iron ore corridor projects, which will restore rail capacity to 7 million tons for coal line and 60 million tons for the iron ore line, and the Polokwane Regional Water Waste Program. As part of the efforts to position infrastructure as an inevitable asset class, government issued an infrastructure bond in 2025, raising 11.5 billion to support the contribution of the BFI approved projects. The BFI call for proposal for 26-27 cycle opens today, Dr. Mtswalet. What that means, both of those people who want to funding via the budget facility for infrastructure need to submit through the window which has been opened from today. We call on public institutions in key sectors of the economy to submit proposals with funding gaps and strategic value for consideration. This includes critical social infrastructure such as courts, correctional facilities. I know Dr. Groenewald has shown a keen interest in 2 specific prisons to be accommodated in this regard. These include also university infrastructure such as the University of Ekurhuleni. University of Ekurhuleni, I don't think is far from realization, Mr. President. After your speech, I tried to dig into it and understand where it is. And it turns out the University of Victoria Lane, there were 3 sites that were identified. There's 1 site which is proposed. All we need is the minister to go and visit the sites and make the approval. Once he has done that, according to the document, I'm learning, according to the document, all he needs to do is appoint a supervising university. Included in this project is going to be student accommodation. Again, I was talking to the minister, Mr. President, and said it's going to be difficult for me to teach a communist about decommodification of student accommodation, because that's essentially the proposal I was putting across to him. On the health front, Dr. Mtsoreti has been up and fighting with me in every budget about 3 specific hospitals. George Munkari Academic Hospital, Inkosi Albert Lutilo Hospital, and Nelson Mandela Hospital. These are the hospitals which will form part of the BFI in the next round. And they're quite important in 2 respects, because they are linked to academic institutions. And secondly, are a demonstration of our commitment that we want to prepare for the implementation of the National Health Insurance by improving the quality of our institutions. Madam Speaker, progressive realization of the fundamental socio-economic rights enshrined in our Constitution is essential to our mission to deal with inequality, poverty, and unemployment. It is a mission that demands that we make prudent fiscal choices. With the health of our public finances comes a great degree of economic freedom and sovereignty. It is this sovereignty that gradually frees us from over-reliance on external debt. It shields us from inherent uncertainties of global finance and global politics. As we have witnessed over the last few years, the established norms of global order can shift and be undermined. To achieve our ultimate goal of better the lives of our people, we must continue pursuing this sovereignty. A budget and a fiscal strategy that advances inclusive growth and the sustainability of public finances is a crucial part of achieving this greater freedom. It moves us closer to fulfilling our constitutional promise to do all that it takes for our people to live with a dignity and prosperity. Madam Speaker, I'm grateful to the President and the Deputy President for their support and leadership. Thank you to Deputy Ministers of Finance, Mr. Sharupain and Dr. Masondo. Mr. Sharupain tells me that he wants also to be doctor. So he wants to do a PhD in fiscal rules. So he's going to compete with Masondo not to be the only doctor in the So I'm thankful to my deputy ministers and my director bank. Let me thank my colleagues in the Ministers' Committee on the Budget and the Budget Council who have shared the task of difficult trade-offs that have to be made in the budget process. Similarly, to the parliamentary committees of finance and appropriation, I express my sincere appreciation. And of course, to my dear wife who has made me so nice looking today. Even the president, I asked him today when he called me to the cabinet, I said, what is my business here, Mr. President? He said, no, we wanted to see how do you look like today. Madam Speaker, Let me also take this opportunity to thank the Commissioner of SARS. The Commissioner of SARS, in order to have a better appreciation Where is he?
Order, honorable members. Actually, the minister was asking the commissioner to stand up. But I am grateful that all of you gave the commissioner a standing ovation.
Yeah. The problem is the members didn't even allow to contextualize this thing, because it's quite important for when we thank the commissioner for the services done over 7 years, we've got to look at the kind of institution he inherited when he took over 7 years ago. It was an institution which was kind of hollowed out, not almost too close to non-functionality, to what the institution which the president in the State of the Nation address called one of the best institutions we've had. That's what the commissioner has done, and we thank him for that. And on behalf of government, I wish to express that unwavering support and thankful to them, because by the next budget, there'll probably be a new commissioner. That depends on the president. There'll probably be a new commissioner of that. So I also thank every South African. The budget reflects our shared journey and the belief that together we can build more equally, more prosperous economy. Yakuqala kaChalbongo ikwenkwe. Ngamachaba namabhongo kaChalbongo ke lawo enkosi.
Enoch, Mamchawe, Umamchawe.
Order.
Dibo.
Order. Can we be seated? Thank you very much, Minister of Finance, for the presentation of the budget and the tabling of the budget instruments, which will now be referred to the appropriate committees for their consideration, and they will come back to the House. Minister, I'm sure you forgot one last sentence of thanking people. I want to thank all these members of Parliament who last year, despite the challenges of having 2.1, 3 point something, but they managed, worked hard, particularly our committees on finance and appropriation, to make sure that in July we were able to pass the budget. It wasn't an easy year, but I think these members of Parliament lived up to the task at hand. Thank you very much to all the honorable members. I will now ask members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and the maids to leave the House, and that concludes the business for the day.
Honorable Speaker, Togodidiza, Deputy Speaker Anneli Lotri.